Hello and welcome to a Star Citizen Alpha 3.6 live state of the game. Star Citizen is still very much a way away from being mainstream playable. It's certainly not a sit down and play game yet. It's geared at testing, feedback and discussion of its features to aid development. However, 3.6 does add a load of new features, improvements, and is extremely fun to play with the right organisation or group even now. Alpha 3.6 has added a good bit of new stuff, and I wanted to talk about that, what's working with it, what's not, what are the problems still that need to be addressed with 3.6, because 3.6 has cleared up a lot of the issues that I had with 3.5. The launch party and join on friends features and all that sort of stuff are working again. Ship AI, for the most part, is active and will engage and attack players. They don't jitter everywhere either, however, they sort of wobble a lot. Their wings sort of wobble, but it's clear that they've made some good improvements there. There's a new game launcher which combines PTU and live access, a much better solution than having two separate launchers. Now, if they could just add the copy account button on the launcher as well, that would actually be really useful. There are new and updated ships and vehicles in this patch. The Vanguard Warden and Hoplite were reworked. They look cooler and the internal space is much better. Also, combat-wise, they're now extremely tanky. They are getting some options to have their nose guns changed in the future, but without suitable options for nose or gimbaled loadouts currently, the ships haven't really come into their own yet. The P-72 Archimedes is the luxury version of the P-52, which also got a little bit of an update, and the P-72 is a new ship in 3.6 if you hadn't guessed. Not anything really game-changing though, as these Parasite ships as well need transportation and they don't have quantum drives of their own, and their primary transport is the Constellation, which doesn't have the functionality to actually carry them yet, to dock and undock with each other. It's just sort of like, meh. Responding to the community's request, CIG also gave the Valkyrie a 30 SCU cargo grid. Previously, it was a troop and small vehicle carrier, but had this sort of like huge internal space that felt like it was being underused if there was no vehicle in there, and CIG sort of like originally dismissed the idea of giving it a cargo grid, stating that ships, some of them have a focus and they shouldn't be able to do every role. While I do agree with that statement, it didn't necessarily seem reasonable in this particular case. So that's all academic now, because they've given it a cargo grid. The Anvil Ballista is a straight-to-live vehicle as well, a bit of a surprise for 3.6. It didn't have a concept sale phase, but it is now available to buy, and this is partly because it's going to appear in Squadron 42, and CIG wanted to start to move towards more ships and vehicles going down the straight to live, no concept phase, straight to, you know, in your hands and playable, drivable. The Ballista is really cool. It's a military anti-ship missile truck, but in 3.6 currently, it has very little use beyond testing. It can't be transported to planets and moons by any ship currently in game. We need the Hercules Starlifter to do that. So it has to be spawned at outposts and gates in game at the moment, and there's very little reason to use it at the moment. No missions exist to protect a facility or underground installation or whatever. NPC ships don't come into atmosphere to fight really at the moment. Give me NPCs that can use ground vehicles or missions where spawning a ballista and defending an area is useful. That would be good. Also, there's no way to actually buy it in game beyond paying real money for it at the moment either, which is a little bit of a oversight or a bit annoying. I do understand the reason they do that though, because they do want to sell ships and vehicles to get them in the game. I'd also like to say that I want to see concept phases, even if the ship is planned to go straight from concept all the way into our hands ASAP. I'd still like to see that concept phase to be part of that pipeline. New law system. So this is a pretty big change and addition, probably the biggest in 3.6. There are now laws that are system-wide under sort of like UEE law in Stanton, like if you kill a player or an NPC or destroying someone's ship, that assuming that they are lawful people that aren't criminals. There are also laws in jurisdictional zones around areas like Lawville, Crusader, ArcCorp. They all have different laws, or at least additional ones in addition to the system-wide UEE ones, like possession of particular prohibited or legal goods and narcotics. There are misdemeanors, which will net you fines, and like confiscation of items, and some of these like parking infractions. If you hover over a zone that you're not supposed to be landing at for too long, you get a parking infraction, you get a fine. More severe crimes like felonies will get you a crime rating and sometimes a large fine as well. Security forces will interdict ships and scan them, and if you run away, you'll get a criminal rating. And if you're found with a stolen ship or prohibited goods, then those goods will either be confiscated. If you've got a stolen ship, you'll get a criminal rating and you'll have to run. Fines are currently automatically implemented, but in the future, you'll have to go to an office to pay them off. The security feature is very cool, but I very often get interdicted, which is very annoying when it happens twice in succession. But this also seems to happen a lot more around legal trade routes. So if I'm going from Hurston to ArcCorp or something. Now, I'm very unlikely to have illegal goods on me when I'm moving between those particular two routes. It's going to be, I'm probably coming from a sort of drugs lab going to another area, and you much more rarely get interdicted by lawful forces in those areas. It does give more of a risk to the outlaw gameplay though, and is certainly core to a good bit of the game moving forward. Grimhex is an exception to the rule of jurisdictions though, where crimes aren't supposed to be detected. However, Grimhex has some issues. Sometimes they are still detected there. It's an alpha. There's also, this could actually just be because security forces seem to spawn there as well. You'll also get criminal ratings for attacking those security forces wherever, if it's... And there's also sort of like dozens and dozens of bounties and AI ships spawning there, which make us sprawling massive ships, and that annihilates frame rates, and the service sort of degrades because of that. I used to get maybe 100 frames around Grimhex in space, now it's maybe 30. It's an issue that they need to get solved ASAP for lots of reasons, but mainly because some players are going to be in single-digit FPS because of that. This is connected to the black market, this sort of law system though. You can now blow up ships and make them drop cargo, which you can then sell at scrapyards, and the scrapyards are also new locations for various delivery missions, sort of like they ask you typically to move around prohibited and illegal cargo to another area. In fact, there are lots and lots of missions everywhere now, and they are given to you based on your proximity as well. The mission system is significantly better. I haven't ever been like out of missions to do. There's missions all the time. In the future, you're going to be able to sell stolen ships at the scrapyard locations as well, and scrapyards are cool. They look all right. Not a huge amount of gameplay there. There are interesting new commodities as well that you can sell in drug slabs and some of the other interesting facilities around the game and scrapyards. A surprise to 3.6 was hacking functionality. Kind of. You can hack security depots, which are underground facilities with a little terminal there, or Security Post Korea, which has the same sort of terminal. They hack down your criminal rating to 0 when you use these. There's also comm arrays, which you can turn off, either for mission objectives or because you want to, turn on them off because you want to be able to commit crimes. They are needed to be able to detect crimes, or that or security forces being in the area. So if you turn them off, that means crime in that area might be more rampant. The actual hacking system requires you to purchase a one-use hacking chip and then use it at the console that you want to hack. The gameplay for this is really, really basic. You put the chip in the slot after equipping it, and then every so often, based on the chip that you bought, because some of them are different than others, they hack faster or more reliable, you have to occasionally click continue within like 60 or 90 seconds, otherwise the hack will be cancelled, and that could happen multiple times, again based on the quality of the chip you purchased. It's pretty lackluster and boring, but it's very much the minimum viable product of interacting with non-vehicle terminals and screens, and that having them affect the game world and having other people be able to interact with those screens at the same time effectively. You can have someone coming in and abort it. Also, missions are generated for players to stop you hacking when you are hacking somewhere. When it comes to the economy, there have been various updates. There are less artificial reset times. Sort of shops have an amount of money in stock that they can keep. Where to buy and sell items has been heavily revised. There are new trade items, some of which are prohibited in certain areas. This makes for some very profitable trade routes, but the risk of your ships exploding or getting disconnected and losing everything is still just too extreme for me. Ship purchase kiosks have been added, allowing you to buy most of the ships that are available, flyable in-game, and vehicles. And missions, sort of, the rewards are now pretty high, and the missions are typically pretty reliable, so you can grind for ships pretty easily now, or much more easily than previously, and it makes it very viable to get a ship that you want that's within a few million at least, within a 3-month patch cycle without too much pain. At least for most of them. The Reclaimer is 15 million Alpha UEC, and that doesn't really have functionality in the game at the moment other than being a big ship. Just remember, every 3 months at the moment, there is a major reset, so bear that in mind. For most gamers, I suspect that the lack of progression is probably the biggest turnoff for the game, more so than it being an alpha and having a large amount of bugs. Talking about bugs, hover mode was also added to ships in atmosphere that go below a certain speed. The flight mode then sort of changes to VTOL, and it keeps your ship up by having most of your thrust going downwards. You fly like a helicopter, which on paper isn't awful, but currently in the game it's just overly fiddly. More minor, precise movements are much harder to do, and when you're trying to stabilize your ship or whatever, you occasionally look down. You can't look directly underneath yourself, and then when you do, you sort of go really aggressively forward and you crash, and if you panic, you spin and you're dead, and you flip your ship. And this is much more apparent if you're trying to land in an enclosed hangar. It just has lots of bugs as well, and certain ships are significantly better than others at the moment. Some ships suffer more than others with bugs as well. The Cutlass Black, for example, requires you to pitch forward, strafe up, and use afterburner, all while pushing W and whatever to get back into the traditional flight model from its sort of hover mode. It's just a bit annoying. The whole implementation of this is more fiddly and annoying than useful. It's going to get more iteration though. Toggle is one of the things. That's going to give us a lot more control. And once you get used to it, it's not horrible, but it's not good. It just adds annoyance. And at this stage in the game, for me at least, I don't think it was a great implementation of it. But it's alpha, it's for testing, totally get that. And hopefully it will be in a good place at some point. But I just want to be able to strafe freely and on a stable ship while in hover mode. I don't want to fly like a helicopter. Just give me reduced speed and reasonable stabilization and my thrusters, most of the thrust going down. But if I pitch forward for some reason to look around or to go forward or whatever in that direction a bit more, that still be driven by W. Have the ship auto-stabilize in that sort of level. The ships aren't helicopters, they're spaceships. Another addition to the flight model is acceleration control, allowing you to throttle power to your thrusters and give you more control. I actually really like this. It goes really well with decoupling and dogfighting and is very useful with hover mode landings. It's a good addition. There are transit improvements as well. They've physicalized elevators, so they have their own internal tube network around locations now, and will all be able to move to lots of different hangars and multiple locations, whatever elevator you're in that area, basically giving you much less of a waiting time. Trains too are now in a loop with multiple trains per track. Again, waiting equals less. Other things have moved, like Delamar and Levski. They've positioned it a long way away from the other planetary bodies, as if it's its own planet, basically. There are shield changes, they have more health, larger shields are much harder to breach. Ships basically have significantly higher times to kill. They are preparing for signed distance field tech coming in the future as well for shields, much better looking shields in the future, although there are improvements there as well. There are mining improvements. I really like mining now. It's pretty chill. Minables are grouped together, but you can only mine in the prospector, and that loop does get very boring and repetitive. There are problems with, at least when I was playing it, sort of certain rocks and minables when you mine them on planets and moons, them falling through the ground sometimes, but in space that's much less apparent because, they're not falling through anything other than space. There are VoIP, voice over IP improvements, and ship hailing now as well. So VoIP is much more widely used, I find. It's push to talk, but on by default. I often have people screaming friendly at me around Security Post Korea before they open fire, which is probably exactly what I'd expect anyway. There is the new Gladius HUD, which at a glance tells you a lot more info about your ship. Much more than previously anyway. It's being tested and will roll out to other ships in some form in the near future. They are redoing lots of the HUD and UI stuff at the moment too. There are character animation improvements. However, characters are still really jittery, so although movement might be more fluid when in third person viewing your own character, it's kind of moot when you're looking at someone else jittering around, and NPCs on the ground also jitter around everywhere. Misfires and wear are in-game and working now. You can basically have your components deteriorating over time. Damage and heat affects this a lot, which than FX functionality. It's a step towards physicalized components, and you can have very minor sort of like graphical glitches with like your thrusters sort of like in sort of like just the VFX effects. But you can also have more major problems if your wear gets down and you have like a critical misfire, and your engine will just turn off for a little while. The lighting around the game looks a lot better as well. MFDs, multifunction displays, work much more effectively for crewmates now. There's still no real proper mission sharing yet at the moment, which is really, really upsetting. 3.6 has had a few problems though, with occasional infinite loading screens, which are genuinely quite annoying. Occasional server and client crashes. I mean, stability isn't awful, but it is a mixed bag. It's not the most stable build they've ever had, but it's not terrible. Combat, although general ship AI is much better, auto gimbals make aiming pretty much unnecessary currently, and ships that don't have gimbaled options just feel a bit nerfed because of that. It's something that should change significantly in the future, with a bit of balance and additional core ship features coming online, like physicalized components and things like that, where it's going to be important to disable certain components and times to kill will be really high, and being able to manually aim and being good with higher damaged fixed weapons might be a lot better. General ship combat is better, but still needs work. There's a lot of issues with ESP, and aiming can be almost ignored if you use auto gimbals at this stage. Not ideal, but it's certainly, well, potentially a step forward, better than 3.5. More rarely, but still happening, is that you could have your ship randomly exploding while landed on the ground on planets and moons. Moving cargo crates can occasionally have you teleported in the middle of space. There is also lots of outlying issues that I'm sure lots of people are having. The main ones that they need to get fixed, though, in the extreme short term, are poor performance and the overly spawning ships at Grimhex, which potentially are causing that. Alpha 3.6 is a massive step forward, in my opinion, but there are still lots of core gameplay features that need to be implemented, and there's lots of half-implemented features which are obviously very alpha, and that's partly the point of Star Citizen at this stage. Early testing for all of this stuff, but it's to be more accessible, it needs to address some of those problems that I mentioned. We know that there's going to be a 3.6.x patch, or patches, planned. Hopefully some of the more pressing issues will be resolved. In fact, potentially they could hotfix, hopefully it's a hotfix issue they could do server-side for the NPC spawning, which would go a long way to helping with performance as well. Maybe if you can join an interesting org, then Star Citizen is extremely playable even now. But if you wanted something that's a bit more fleshed out or solo, with a PvE experience, Star Citizen isn't really ready yet. If you're thinking, shall I come back to Star Citizen? It's really cool to see these like new patches and be a tourist, come and see the new stuff. I mean, the planets like Lorville and ArcCorp and even the lighting changes they make to them do look sometimes absolutely amazing and fantastic. Pretty much always, in fact. There's always something beautiful to see. But for long-term play without an organisation or a group that are really into Star Citizen, it's probably better to check out another game at the moment. But I'm interested to know your experiences with 3.6 if you're playing the live build. Are you loving it? Are you hating it? Is there some sort of problem that you've been having that I necessarily haven't? Do you hate hover mode, or you're like, no, actually, hover mode's okay, and everyone just needs to get good? Because I've been told that a lot. Get good scrub, effectively. But I do think it takes away, at the moment, stuff rather than adds to the game, in my opinion. Just the implementation is just not great at the moment. Give me stabilization. Let me hold X and then still strafe. Let me toggle the ability to strafe rather than fly like a helicopter. But I just don't want to fly like a helicopter, personally. Maybe that's just me. But I suspect there's a lot of other people as well. But yeah, as I said, please tell me what your experiences are with 3.6 and what you think in the comments below. Every month we have a ship giveaway. For July, it's for an 890 Jump, the mighty luxury ship. To be in for a chance of winning that, just be subscribed to my channel and comment on any of my videos this month. More details down below. This has been donated by My Radar. They make a real-world weather app, and this also has some of the astral bodies from Star Citizen in there too, giving some really interesting information. It's getting more updates and functionality, that app as well, and they're adding the planets into the game too. I'm also shilling for NordVPN. If you're looking for a VPN, check them out, as they offer many benefits over free services and allow you to more securely and more freely access the internet, as well as helping you be protected while you're playing online. If you're looking for a gaming PC or upgrade instead, consider Shadow as well, a cloud gaming service that allows you to stream a Windows 10 gaming PC environment from a data center directly to your phone, laptop, PC, or other device. It's great for Star Citizen as long as you have an appropriate internet connection. For both of those services, NordVPN or Shadow, please use the code BoredGamer for discount. If you would like to further support my channel and for more Star Citizen content, consider becoming a Patreon or YouTube member with that join button below my videos. All the links and all that sort of stuff down below. If you've got any feedback, if you'd like to talk about anything that we've talked today, if you've got any questions, whatever, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below as well. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the verse.